welcome to This Week in Black Media, February 13th, 2019. As you can see, we're in the private mode on the website here because this video hasn't been uploaded yet, but we will make it public. It will be public by the time you see this. So what we're going to begin with, for those of you that are new, what we're doing is we're doing a year-long ongoing commentary on some key topics, largely being the reparations movement and then that connection to history. And by the end of the year, if you view this every week, and specifically if you take the time to look at some of the videos that are pointed out and the other internet channels that are being promoted here, you can find one that is that you are most partial to, and hopefully follow that, and then maybe tune in back over here and see how the data is built in a chronological order that will speak for itself by the time we get to the end of the process. In summary, this is a calendar-based format, a cyclic-based format of education with recurring themes that are documented through the calendar in the ways that the ancient Africans did. It is my intuition that this is a way of more conveniently disseminating information, and when it's done in the proper context through a recursive sequence that is associated with nature and the cycles of the planet, that memory retention will be improved. And this is not something that I invented, it's something that I demonstrate in the ancient African texts and their ritual processions. And we see that also practiced by our brothers and sisters in India. And we can look at our cousins in Israel that also go according to the calendar sequences. So we're getting back to that because we invented it. Now, some no doubt will ask, why, if this is This Week in Black Media, why are we concentrating on international affairs associated with the Palestinians here, in this video here, with the traitor, I consider him a traitor, Marco Rubio, and their the Senate's, the U.S. Senate's overwhelmingly passing an anti-BDS bill, that's anti-boycott, divestment, sanctions, that they don't want to allow the Palestinians to peacefully protest against Israel. And the argument here is, number one, that every senator that signed the legislation is a traitor to the U.S., the citizens of America, because it potentially violates our right to free speech. What they're allowing is a foreign country to dictate to us whether we can protest or not. And when we lift the veil, we're going to find that the same powers that are trying to silence the BDS movement will be the same powers that try to silence the reparations movement. And we will see that they have worked together in cahoots, pun intended there, since the slavery period, since the Jewish involvement with the slave trade. They work together in slavery, and we'll go through the Bank of England, all that, by the time we get to the end of the year. That's why I say it's important here that we look over here, how in chronological order, how you'll be able to follow all of this. And then as your reference point, all you have to remember is, okay, it's week 7 or week 8, there was this here. These themes will recur. These images will recur. These conversations will recur. And we'll try to keep them brief. So, and your retention will be better if you take time to watch these other videos. So this is Marco Rubio. If you watch this video from the Last American Vagabond, it details the BDS movement there. Become familiar with it, because we're going to continue to go into that. Now, my point here is there are others that are resisting Israel. And what Israel is worried about, in short, is this is the same way that the protests started against the apartheid in South Africa. Why did they see this pattern? Because it's an apartheid state. Israel is an apartheid state. So we see that the Malaysia Prime Minister is against it, is against Israel. And you watch that video and you watch what Israel's leaders have said, many of whom we could consider psychopaths. They're certainly racists and advocating genocide flat out. And I will show clips of that. We don't have the time to do that here, but we also have where Ireland has spoken out and decided to ban Israel goods from Israel. So the boycott has begun by those that are aware, and it isn't appropriate that it's the Fighting Irish. They're one of the first European communities to boycott Israel in conjunction with Malaysia. This brings us to a very important thing that we must not forget is that all Jews do not support the Zionist state. The Orthodox Jews, large contingents of them, are against it because it's anti-biblical. And if you watch this video here, there's a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, that explains this. And if you see how the Orthodox Jews, the protesters that are against being drafted into the Israeli army, because there is a draft, they treat them like the protesters in the 60s. There's video on there. They're running over them with horses. There are many, many of the Jews in Israel that are anti-Zionist. They're against it because it's anti-biblical. That's a whole other story. This brings us to this video here with Ilhan Omar, who was outspoken and anti-BDS. And you see the title there, Ilhan Omar runs from CNN reporter when pressed on BDS support. Now, as outspoken as her and Representative Tlaib were, for her to quote-unquote run away, you have to wonder what made her silent. To go from one extreme to another like that, I'm hoping she just didn't want to give fuel at the inappropriate time. But if she does remain silent, it is amazing that she would change her tune that quickly. The only time I've ever seen people change their tune into silence that quickly is when their lives have been threatened. But I don't think that Muslim people bend that way. They have a long history showing that that's not the case. But I am disturbed by that. She didn't talk about it, and that's what they're there for, is to talk anti-BDS. So this brings us to someone that is not afraid to talk about the conditions in Israel, and that's Noam Chomsky. And you can watch any of these videos, and he goes in on what the problem is with the Jewish state, how corrupt it is, how the United States and Israel benefit from the apartheid state there in Palestine, and how the atrocities against the Palestinians, how disgusting they are, and they are. Anybody that looks at it. That's why when you see punks like Rubio, little Marco up here, advocating, talking about that it's terrorism, all you have to do is look at these videos, to just look at what they do over there, to know there's something deeply, deeply disturbing and wrong about our own senators supporting the horrible things that happen there. And again, what does this have to do with black media? We're going to get there. And as I've already stated, that's what the reparations movement is going to get. These are the same powers. So one might ask, do I support the Palestinians' right to their free lands? You're motherfucking right, I do. I'm all with that. And there are many of them that support us, regardless of what others might say. So this brings us to another who is well-versed in the Palestinian situation, and that this is Angela Davis, who's speaking out against BDS, and who has a long history there, who spent time as a Black Panther, and her history is fascinating, and she has always supported BDS, shamelessly supported BDS and the Palestinian people. And when you do your history, and this is another thing we'll go into. Now, we don't have time to do it. I try to do this fast, but this is the themes that are going to run this year, with what you'll learn about. You keep coming here. What we're going to find is that the African Americans, the Black Panthers, the most radical aspects of our society, of blacks in the 60s, worked together and were in correspondence and saw identity with the Palestinian people and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Do you know who changed that? Do you know who went against them? The system reinforcing Negroes of the Congressional Black Caucus. And those powers are still there today, and those are the powers that are losing power now in our community, which I'm going to get down to here when we look at Sister Vicki Dillard and what's happening with the Advise show. So, speaking of the system reinforcing Negroes, this brings us to Kamala Harris. And Nico House talks about it, how she's the final form of white, quote-unquote, white supremacy. You know, I don't call anything about that supreme, but it shows that they are the meat puppets of the Eurocentric agenda. And this includes the so-called Boule. And what do we have to see here? There she is, kissing ass, with Netanyahu's murderess behind. A disgusting human being he is. Murderer. Believe that. This brings us to Sister Vicki Dillard, who it was very nice to see that she was on there with Phil from Advise Show, and we're going somewhere here. And Vicki Dillard is with Fly Nubian Queen Network. I believe the brainchild of Dr. Boyce Watkins. So when all is said about Dr. Boyce and all of the things that he does in the community and all the businesses he runs, another title he deserves is Talent Scout. We cannot forget that he's the one that brought many of us to the works of Yvette Carnell. You see, so I believe he's handpicked Vicki Dillard. I believe he's handpicked Michi X. I believe Boyce Watkins knows what he's doing. So this is all good. So look at Sister Vicki and Phil go in on the boule, and that's the upper class, the system reinforcing Negro meat puppets of the white agenda. And it's changing the powers there. They used to have a stranglehold on the black community. They used to be the Negro whisperers, and it's not working anymore. And they should feel threatened by that because they never were spooks that stood by the door. We want to kick the damn door down. It's already been blown away spiritually. So this shows how they expose her, how limited our voice has been prior to the internet. And that brings us to this video here from a well-educated black woman who simply did not know about the descendants of slaves narrative and the reality behind that. And she made a response to the so-called bots. Those of you that know that they tried to say it was Russian bots that were attacking Kamala Harris, where it's not. And Yvette Carnell and them went into that, and you will learn more about that. But here in this instance, in this video, we have a woman that was with it right away. She just had to see it. She hadn't been exposed to the data yet. That's the point here. That's what's spreading. It's spreading. No one organizes like black folk, y'all. All you have to do is look at our fractal architectures to know that it's built in us. It's built in us. And this internet and this instantaneous communication and population demographics say it's happening again. Barring them trying to institute a form of biological warfare, which we have to assume they'll try to do, which my deep intuition is it will only backfire on them in the worst way. And I have a history of predictions. This brings us to the voice, the power of the black voice. Why is it that we have not seen more of the video of Meek Mill, who has started to talk about political issues rather than selling drugs in the streets? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why the leaders in the music industry, many of them Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish, promote the music that is negative. And it's because negative sells, regardless of the racism that could be behind it. It's because negative sells. We know that if you look at our history of social media, the loving music, music that's expressing unity, they've created a culture that isn't as saleable, but that hasn't always been the case, and we can get back to that. My point here is if our rappers ever, if 1/10 of our rappers started talking about real issues, it change it. It change it. Our cultural power is, our resonance is that powerful. I was just watching a series on gang banging in Tonga, the Tonga Islands. You got Crips there. You saw it tagged up there. They're wearing baseball hats. They're dressed very urban. See, that's how powerful our influence is, and we know that, and we're starting to talk about it at a collective level. You see, and we're starting to talk about it, and we're the former system reinforcing Negro meat puppets of white agenda. They don't matter anymore. We don't care about your degrees. We don't give two fucks about your fraternities or secret handshakes. We care about our ancestors and our people. And we're not willing to sell out. And that's the beautiful thing, because a history check will show who sold out. It's self-evident. This social media, your track record's going to show forever, barring that we don't blow ourselves up. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't leave room for people to move, because people have to wake up. You can't fault someone for sitting in ignorance. And I have an old video that I'll show at some point with Dr. Ivan Van Sertima and Dr. Ben. And they were both discussing how they were European duplicates, both of them, and they're laughing about it. They're laughing about it because they had been brainwashed. Dr. Ben's talking about how he was rooting for the white men to shoot the Indians in the cowboy movies. I myself can remember wanting to be Tarzan when I was little. And see, that's how they mess with our minds. With the iconography. And I assure you, when I go into the analysis of Professor Black Truth's video on George Washington, American Icon, that is something special. And we're going to go all the way in. But I'm getting tangential there. But there's our rappers. So why haven't we seen more of that? Why haven't we seen more Meek Mill speaking out? Is it because our media platform's not big enough? And that brings us to Brother Phil. 1 million subscribers. See, through a brother like that, if we multiply, which we will, it's inevitable. Wait till I show you the African projections for our populations. We will dominate in every field, including academia. We're going to rewrite history. We're going to rewrite it. It deserves to be rewritten in our own image. That's why when we look at research coming from the Max Planck Institute, I believe it's in Germany, they're always trying to reorient everything to a European origin. They're full of shit, number one. Number two, they don't matter anymore. We're going to overwhelm them. That's how it looks. That is what the playing field looks like. That is what the analysis is. Things can change. I'll be the first to admit that. That's why you don't get puffed up. But as it sits, and I am a realist. If things were bad, I'd say they're bad. They've never been better for us as a people. So, 1 million subscribers, when we start promoting, when these rappers wake up, it's just a matter of time. All you have to do is show them the images from the slavery. That's what woke me up. I had an old brother involved with a secret handshake organization. Worked with him for several years, and one day he just came in and slapped a stack of lynching images on top of the table. This was in 2002. And I just looked through them. And it lit a fire. I'd seen them before, but never like that. One after the other after the other. I'd been reading a lot then too. Specifically, Michel Foucault, Power Knowledge. Realizing how our school system is, when I came to knowledge how our school system is just an extension of the prison industrial complex, based on military barracks, that our education system is based on the old Hindu schooling system. This comes from John Taylor Gatto. How the Brahmin class can sit and continue to dominate a larger class through the structure of education. That's how our education system is. You see, we're breaking out of that too. So, I could go on, and we will. So this brings us to our second page. A lot of videos this week. Let's scroll up. And why the international knowledge is important. So this makes us look at what is happening over there in South America now, where the coup is taking place. And they're trying. And is it another Gaddafi situation? These are the same powers. They're trying to overthrow the leader in Venezuela, and then place their own system reinforcing meat puppet in there. And so is he the next Gaddafi? Because the same thing happened with Gaddafi. And here, look at here, remember that name, Bank of England. The Bank of England froze their money. Froze their money so they can't get it. This is an international affair. They have no business doing that. See, the United States and Israel violate international law at will. They are the bullies of the planet. See, some of our political leaders are beginning to speak out, like Tulsi Gabbard. I like her. Have you listened to her? We could always be wrong. I don't agree with everything she's done, and you can never judge. People can be fantastic sociopaths and fool people, but I go by tone, and that woman is centered. To the best of my estimation, she's honest, deeply honest. And that's why they're trying to smear her. Nico House did a couple videos on it, but it's true. She's got a centered voice. Very centered. And this brings us over here to this witch. And she is wicked. Hillary Clinton, I'm so glad she lost. I'm so glad Donald Trump is in there. Where she laughs at the murder of Gaddafi. This is after she sat with his son and befriended him. It's psychotic. And yet people were going to vote for her. Which makes me ask another question. Where was all the vitriol for the Hillary Clinton candidacy that Kamala Harris is getting now? A part of me suspects it is because she's a black woman. A part of me suspects that it is. It's our own black community is quicker to jump on a black woman. Hillary deserves it 50 times more than Kamala ever did. That's a fact. And you check this channel here on the videos I produced, all the anti-Hillary videos I produced. She's disgusting. Where was the vitriol for her? If we're going to do that, we need to be consistent. So, but here again, with our reparations movement, if it grows, we have to consider the context within an international level, and that means just at a fundamental level, you have to care about the plight of other people. I rock with the Palestinians. I rock with the Dalit people of India. I empathize with them at a fundamental human level. There's nothing that perhaps disgusts me more than selective humanitarianism, because the two are opposite. There's no such a thing. You can't be selectively humanitarian. There's an ugly fringe of supremacy connected with that, or exclusivity, or at the very least, gross prejudice. But make no mistake about it, in these international affairs, within the American context, no one has waited longer than black Americans. No one has waited longer than the descendants of slaves. This is why I think that the narrative of Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore, they're very clear that they respect other people's rights, that they are not against, and they are not for anyone suffering. They just simply say we've waited the longest. And then Vicky Dillard just talked about that also. We have, and we've supported everyone else, and if they don't support us, they are not our friends. It's very simple. It's very simple. And then people are known by their actions. What I'm saying, if it grows, we're going to be a part of an international community. And we have to connect with those that we have deep and fundamental resonances. And there is no doubt that our situation is identical in many aspects to the plight of the Palestinians. And it is why we saw a common identity in the 60s. Now, of course, yes, there are Palestinians that are going to be racist, but by far and away, not all of them. Many of them look to the African-American history of struggle for inspiration. That's a fact. Many of them. I would say most of them. And the same thing goes with the Dalits, the so-called Dalit people of India, our brothers and sisters in India. So, yeah. So please do stick with us, because we're going to continue to go into it. You're going to get a history lesson here if you're not aware of the data. We're going to dig in deep, and we're going to show how sick it is that United States senators support BDS sanctions, calling it anti-Semitic, when they condone the anti-Semitism that the Israel populations are placing on their cousins, the Palestinians, whom, by the way, African American people, we are related to, both sets of people from biblical times. That's a whole other tangent, but the occupiers of Palestine aren't the only ones that have the right to make a claim to that ancient Israel tradition, which is African traditional religion. Oh, believe that. Believe that. Our narrative is as strong as anything that they can create. And ours is based on evidence. There's not at all. So, I've rambled far longer than I had anticipated. But as always, until next week, continue to watch and support Black media